both of you for your testimony here today. It seems a bit disingenuous to me for you to have identified yourselves as interested parties when in fact you have attempted to rebut virtually every argument that we've heard for the last 2 days, the last 3 days, about repealing Common Core. I mean, are you opposed to it, or are you in favor of repealing Common Core? I mean, just...
Mr. Chairman, Representative Polanda, we respect the right of this committee to proceed as it deems appropriate. And if it so chooses to repeal the Common Core, that's fine. I think our point is to provide fact-based information so that the committee does so with its eyes open, and whatever course of action it takes, that it's well aware of the realities and it makes its decisions based and informed by fact-based information.
Representative Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kind of trying to learn rapidly about your organization to make sure that I understand what how you got created. Education first. Funding sources. Is it achieving? How do you operate? How do you get donations from people? Do you get money from the states? Are you part of a multi-state? Or are you just Ohio? And how was it created? Kind of interested in that. I knew you were part of the STEM Learning Network. Did you get money through Battelle, through the Gates Foundation, through Battelle, just part of it I want to understand, and it's kind of been confusing in this legislation, is trying to understand how these organic groups spring up, studies are done, legislation happens, and then 20 years later we look back and say we're really not accomplishing the goals of all these great reforms. Now we need new standards from this consortium. So that's, I guess, I hope that wasn't too many questions.
No, that's fine. Education First is a business. It's an LLC. It's a partnership. We have 40 people across the country. I'm an equity partner in that firm. Paolo is also a leader in the firm. We have each individually in our company served in government or higher education or in K-12 public education over our careers, and we are now consultants. So it's an LLC structure. We are incorporated in Seattle, but I am an owner in the company. There are 3 of us. And 4 of us who work with Education First live and work in Ohio. The firm was put together formally, I believe, in 2005. Might have been 2006. I joined in 2009, and Paolo joined soon after that.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Was Education First, did you advise the ODE in its application for Race to the Top?
We did.
You did. And who was I understand that you did a case study on Race to the Top. Who was your client when we performed that?
Our client, when we did the Race to the Top case study, I believe, was ICF, which is an organization that does work for a variety of clients, including the federal government.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, could I offer a point of clarification? At the time the state's Race to the Top grant was written, I was Vice Chancellor of the State Board of Regents and was involved as part of the state's writing team, but as a representative of the Board of Regents. I was not at Education First at that time.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead.
But was Education First in existence at that point, and was Education First, you with Word Education,
yes,
you were
correct.
Okay, so you were brought on later. One of the questions was, do you get money through the Battelle, through the STEM Learning Network? Understanding Gates has funded the STEM Learning Network, which also funds Battelle. And part of the thing that's confusing for people to understand, because there seems to be some financial implications here, and sometimes where you sit is where you stand, etc. And money flows from the Gates Foundation to the Hunt Foundation, from the Hunt Foundation to Achieve, from Achieve to Battelle, Battelle back to Achieve. There's just a lot of a network of money and very professional people, by the way, who were part of this movement. So I commend you on your knowledge of Ohio's history. I guess that question back again. We've had a series of reforms in Ohio. We've had a series of studies telling us we needed to do reform. We've had legislation related to reform, and somehow we arrive at 2010 and we have failed miserably. I guess my question is, okay, maybe you've got counter remarks you want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. I don't think Ohio has failed miserably, but we haven't done as well as we could for each one of the children across our state. When we don't yet have graduation rates that we want, when we have remediation rates in higher education at 41% from students who did graduate high school, who think they're ready, we have much more work to do. And so I don't think that it's that we have failed. It's that we have to continue to move forward and figure out how do we close the gap between the students who are achieving and who are ready, and making sure all the rest of our students can have that same opportunity. And so Ohio, like many states, continues to try to figure out, both through practice and through policy, how is it that we can help all of our students achieve at the level that we really want them
And
to.
if I could add, Mr. Chairman, Representative Thompson, if you go back and look at the progress we have made since the first 9th grade proficiency tests have been implemented, we are substantially in a better position today than we were in the days when that work started. So if you plotted a comparable data line from 1987 clear to where we are today, you would see substantial improvement in the education systems of the state in terms of the students being produced.
One more question.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, so 40% remediation rate would be considered a success.
I didn't say success, I said progress.
Oh, progress. You were worse than that before.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. One other question here. This concern about federal control and who's in charge. Who paid for the development of Park and Smarter Balance? Was that states or was that the federal government?
That was through a grant with the federal government to two consortia. There were a variety of competitors in order to gain that grant, and they awarded it to Smarter Balance and Park Consortia to develop two different items.
Okay, Representative Ramos. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you both for your informative testimony. It's very important, in my opinion, in the age of term limits, that we do have a good history of what we're dealing with. And beyond our speaker, no one's been professionally watching this body since as early back as this report talks about. I do remember a number of these things as a member in the decade before on caucus staff, but something I've been trying to wrap my head around this week, just as we just had this bill this week, is what was going on in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We had a few experts who helped to develop that system testify before us, but I was interested to hear that you had stated that Commonwealth was looking at replacing their standards in 2010 anyway. Could you elaborate a little bit on what was happening in the Commonwealth at that time?
I can, but probably not much more because I wasn't in Massachusetts at the time. It is our understanding that Massachusetts, who had very good standards and had made tremendous progress, that's already been described to you, had said these standards have now, we've used them for 10 years, it's time for us to reevaluate them and move forward. And so the state of Massachusetts undertook a process, as they normally would, to do that work. And they got nearly to the end, not all the way to the end of that process, and had the opportunity to participate in Common Core. And did an alignment study between what Common Core content was, what that standard set looked like, with the standard set that Massachusetts had recently developed but not yet adopted. WestEd, is my understanding, we can give you the citation for this, did the analysis. And they also went through a due diligence process with their in-state experts looking at both of those sets of standards. It was determined at that point in time that the Common Core was as good or better than the newly developed Massachusetts standards, and they went forward with an adoption process. Now, there are others who could give you much more detailed information about that. David Driscoll, who was a former commissioner there in Massachusetts, who led that state ably, along with some of the folks who have testified here today, through their period of real academic growth and achievement. Also Mitchell Chester, who's the current commissioner there, who formerly was a commissioner, a deputy commissioner here in the state of Ohio, and a number of others on their state board who could be helpful to you, as well as the people you've already heard from.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, Representative Ramos, expand on so many of us that work in the public policy sector of education, we ask the question of why did Massachusetts, why were they able to get to the #1 spot in the country? And it really proves the point that was articulated yesterday that, just putting new standards out there doesn't get you there. Doesn't get you there. And Massachusetts never stopped. When they put their first set of standards out, they accompanied it with diligent and collaborative efforts around teacher professional development, materials development, a really strong, committed, not only by the Department of Education, but from their governors, from their business community, and in collaboration with their stakeholder groups, to sort of relentlessly focus on the implementation work. And that's where I think sometimes we get lost, is we see the standards, and there's no doubt the standards are important, but the real challenge in getting this work done right is in the implementation and the follow-through in terms of school leadership and teachers and the whole collection of entities and forces that come together to make a child's education real. And I think that's the opportunity that Ohio has to continue to drive that.